The story I'm going to tell you right now, or the event that I'm presenting in here, is a little bit different than the ones you might expect in the course of this session at all. So first of all, in order not to trouble that thing too much up, if you now expect within the next hour fire stuff or smoke or some kind of new or old tactics, complex technical rescues, even Swedish ones, I can tell you there will be none of that. So I hope I don't disappoint you too much. The story that I'm going to tell you started on one Tuesday afternoon last year, back in August, when I received a phone call from the acting citywide commander of our department. And he told me, just to inform you, there was a discovery of a World War II bomb. And your day, because I was scheduled to be the next citywide tour commander on Thursday, and he told me, yeah, your day might be slightly different than the ones before. And I was like, okay, you discovered a bomb. This is something that happens once or twice a year in our jurisdiction. We have a lot of them. But he said, yeah, but this one is different. This is a blockbuster. And I was thinking around, because I heard Blockbusters. I was looking at things like that. So, smart guys in any case. And I thought, wow, what's behind that in the end? I mean, what is a blockbuster? And in the middle, it's not David Hasselhoff, just for it's John McDonough, of course. And it finally turned out that we found this explosive ordnance, or this World War II bomb, during planned sounding activities, but nobody at this point really realizes the consequences that this will have. Just situation on scene, what had happened. So around 4 in the afternoon, our fire department control center was informed by the police that there was an undetonated World War II bomb at a location called Wismarer Straße, Wismarer Street, which is around the university in Frankfurt. And our procedures for that case, they say we sent a division chief on scene and to give us a first report and what's behind that. So Division 1 was deployed. He appeared on scene, and he reported back that this bomb or this device is an aerial mine typed HC-4000. I've never heard of an HC-4000 before. And the second thing he reported was that this contains a total amount of explosive of 1.4 tons. So, looking back a little bit in history, some 75 years, as you all know, Germany was on some strange kind of business model at this time. And so a lot of people decided to convince us to change something. And that was the time where the guys from Great Britain invented this Avro Lancaster bomber, which has the capacity to carry at least 6 tons of load. And there were different setups, how these bombers were loaded. For example, like that. And the device that we're talking about is the big one in the middle that they found at this time. So the HC-4000, called Blockbuster, you can see it here. It has 3 detonators on the front, so to make sure that when it drops and when it falls to the ground, it ignites in any case. Fortunately, that didn't work with the one that we found. And there was another version of that with a tail wing behind that, which enables that device to explode even in the air. So the tactical background of this thing was to create a huge shock wave, opening roofs and windows, and then the next row of bombers are coming behind them, throwing a lot of phosphoric devices down, so in order to burn the buildings up and to create a firestorm. So that was the tactical idea. Here's one that has been loaded, and this was it. So it was dropped along with other bombs, and in the second row there were these phosphoric bombs. We find a lot of them actually, but they're not a big deal. So the state bomb squad is coming and they put them to buckets and just carry them away. Even touch it with gloved hand without bigger safety measures. So that's not a real big thing. Of the HC-4000, there were about 85,000 pieces dropped over Germany in the time of the World War. And the interesting thing is that also technology moved on, and the British guys also created an HC-8000 and an HC-12,000. So they connected these HC-4000 like a Lego system all together and throw it down. So we're back today as we were. So we found one of those. And the man who's doing the dismantling from the state bomb squad said, we need an evacuation area of 1.5 kilometers. And the disarming was planned to be on Sunday, September 3rd at 12 o'clock, latest. So, of course, he knew that evacuating this huge area would give a lot of problems to finally managing that. He said that is the latest possible time that he has to start this dismantling. The problem was that the body around the covering was crashed, and that parts of the explosive are coming out, and they were reacting with the oxygen of the air. So this is a process that had to be controlled. So they were there all day long, of course. The discovery scene was secured by the police. But the latest time he could do that is on September 3rd, so that gives us 5 days ahead for the disarming mission. And it would take around 4 hours to disarm this device. You have a look at the incident scene. So these were the sounding activities. This all is based about huge data files or huge amounts of photos, aerial photos that the Allies had done after the bombing. So they just was some kind of quality management, how this bombing finally turned out, and how effective it was. And on these pictures you can see if there's a crater around that device or if it just dropped to the ground. And these pictures are used today to find these devices, but you can't finally decide if this is a big one or if this is a small one. So you see there is something and it's undetonated, and then you go there and look for it. So this was exactly what had happened there. So a day later, Wednesday, July the 30th, at the morning, we had the first internal meeting in the fire department and report about the actual situation. We were collecting facts. What does that mean? How many people are in that zone around that? We founded an internal planning group, which resembles our emergency management committee, to do the preparation of the evacuation of the disarming, of course. A huge point was the topic we were talking about responsibilities, because normally this isn't an action for the fire service. So disarming of an undetonated World War II device is nothing that we have to do something with. So it's in the hand of the city regulatory department, because they can issue, they can say that people have to leave, or they can order evacuations and all these things. So this is nothing really that has to do with the fire service. But it turns out finally that, of course, the fire service is the #1 address for if there's anything that has to be done structurized, organized, quickly, on a weekend, in the night. We have the forces for that. We have the organizational background for that. And this is finally the reason why, in the end, the responsibility would be at the regulatory department, but it came back to us, of course. We made the first plans and the first overviews, and we were planning another meeting at the police headquarters, and we are taking all the other city departments that are involved in this to this meeting and prepared that. Media work is a big one. I'm going to show you a little bit later on more about this, because this is one of the key factors in that. At 1 o'clock we had the second meeting, and at this point the regulatory department officially asked the fire department for administrative assistance. So now we're officially in the game, and we can act as we were supposed to. They also issued an official direction for the evacuation. So they say that from Sunday, 6 o'clock, nobody's supposed to be there in that evacuation zone anymore until it is opened finally again. Finally, press and media work. It was decided that the fire department and the police department are doing this together. So in order to speak one language, which is pretty important at an event like that. And we established a public telephone hotline, because, of course, when you hear something like that and when you're affected, you got to be sure that somebody is calling you and asking a lot of questions. And in order to keep our emergency hotlines free, this was the step that has to be done. So the evacuation zone was also determined together with the state bomb squad, and it was split up in sectors. We were also looking at comparable incidents. Where had other devices of that kind be found, and what was the situation there? Maybe can we learn something, or are there some results that we can obtain or use? And it turns out that a device like that was found 6 years before in Koblenz, which is around 150 kilometers away from us. They had an evacuation of around 45,000 people, but this was later in December, so different situation to ours. There was a detonation of a device like that during construction work. I'm not sure if there were casualties during that. I think 1 or 2 maximum, but that turned out to be very, very not that dramatic as it sounded first. And the latest one that was in Augsburg in 2016 with 45,000 people affected, also late in December, other weather conditions outside. And the informations we get also about the results and the things that have become to, or the things that the people drew out of this were slightly different. So for us, we had no base in nothing we could stick back on finally. So that's the circle of the 1.5 kilometers around, and it was detailed a little bit more, making it exact matching to several streets. This is something that was done by us together with the state bomb squad, and it was also been split up in sections, in districts, together with the police. And here on the top, this is fire headquarters, so we were out of range, fortunately. And yeah, others weren't, but we're coming to this right now. So if we take a look inside that zone, we found out that there were around 60,000 to 70,000 people. So the total number in the end was 67,000, I think, around that. We had around 20 nursing homes inside that zone. We had hospitals, 2, and the most complicated thing, or the focus in these hospitals, next to all these ICU or IC units that were in that, was in the St. Marien Krankenhaus, the state biggest ward for premature infants, so kids that come to birth too early. And there were around 60 babies lying on that ward. So this is something that had to be specially taken care of. We had the police headquarters right in the middle, but they decided to switch over, which wasn't that complicated. We had the state radio and TV station inside that. We had the federal bank, and a lot of ideas, of course, what that would make. Yeah, but everybody has seen Ocean's 11, but it wasn't an option in the end. It was too complicated. We had the National Library inside that, which is not that dramatic at all. And we had about 30 consulates inside there. This was a little tricky because when you enter a consulate, then you're abroad. So the question is, how does German law apply to a consulate situation or a consulate building at all? But they were very cooperative, so we didn't have to discuss that. And Germany's biggest internet connection point, which is nothing that, that complicated at all, but if you always have to keep in mind that there might this device might explode or detonate, and that would have meant, if that internet connection point would have been destroyed, there wouldn't have been any internet in Germany at all. So it's a piece of special infrastructure, but yeah, not that dramatic at all. So if you take a look at the card, we had the federal bank right here next to the highway. We had the police headquarters, the state TV and radio station, the National Library, and the 2 hospitals. And another point that we were also looking at, if this device is going to explode, what kind of destruction would it cause? Because we need to prepare for this, of course, also. And in the inner circle, the destruction would be massive. So the leader of the state bomb squad said that there won't be any building left within that inner circle. We would have heavy damage in the circle all around, and other damages in the third circle until our evacuation zone, or the border of our evacuation zone. So that was something that had to be taken care of and had to be looked at. So, looking at the hospitals, the idea was in the planning that we relocate these the patients in the hospitals, the ones that could not be set free to that time, to other hospitals. And the good thing is that one of our hospitals in the city, they have an empty station which is only put in service if we have bigger incidents. So this station was, or this ward was put on duty, and the doctors and the nurses just follow their patients. So we just relocate them. Also, because not everybody was able to be put in that spare station, so we had to use other hospitals too. We had to bring in additional nursing staff that was put in service. Number of transports from the hospitals, there were around 150 people lying, and partly of them under intensive care. Sitting around 800, and neonatal, that's what I was telling you about the babies, around 60. the nursing homes. Due to our information, we had in the evacuation zone 20 nursing homes. But taking a closer look or trying to contact them, we found out that our information isn't that valid anymore. So we tried to call them, tried to get in contact with the responsible persons, and that turned out to be very complicated in some cases, and partly it gave us contradictory information. So we decided to send some battalion chiefs from different districts to there to investigate exactly on scene what's going on, how many people are there, how many do need assistance, and what are the conditions on scene. It turned out that of these 20, there are only 12 really existing. Definitely help needed were only at 6, because the other 6 just moved their patients to other facilities that they were in contact with. So we had 5 days ahead, and they were a great source of they helped themselves, so which was better for us in the end. And the number of patients lying were about 50, and we also decided to transport them to the other hospital with the empty ward or the empty station. And after that, this part was nearly clear, and we were looking at other special objects. So the state TV and the state radio station, they were relocated with the radio program to Kassel, which is in the far north. And the funny thing was they had a very unique mixture of music then, because there were normally four channels, and with all kinds of music from the 80s, music from today, classic music, and music like Umtata, you would say. And what they decided to do is that they're playing each type of music in a row. So there was a song of each kind after another. So, and we had a very, very unique mixture to listen to. So if it comes from classic to Umtata to Dr. Alban, I don't know, you know. Good. The TV part of the state TV was put to fire headquarters, which was a unique decision at that moment. But we were thinking of where can we put them and where can we control them in the end. So the decision was made to let them come to fire headquarters, give them their own space, their own room. We defined clear rules and where they're supposed to go and where they're not supposed to go. We promised to feed them with our chief of department, of course. And yeah, there were short distances if the situation had flipped over or whatever. And so we had a unique possibility of getting into the TV program because everybody was watching that live from our ground there. And it was for us a unique opportunity to get online on the TV at any time. Federal Bank, most exciting thing, but they decided to leave a security crew in the safe room. So that plan didn't work at all. Police headquarters, they were completely evacuated. So headquarters was empty, including some prison cells they had inside there, so for short times. And they relocated their command to the 13th precinct, which is a little bit more in the west, but we exchanged liaisons with our emergency management committee. So the chain of command and the exchange of information was guaranteed at that point. The consulate properties also were completely evacuated. They were very cooperative. The National Library also completely evacuated. And all in all, for us, for the accommodation, as I told you, we were planning with 60 to 70,000 people that needed to leave the city or the evacuation zone. And Some of them are mobile, some of them are able to help themselves, but there must be some sort of accommodation for people that just didn't want to leave the city, didn't want to go to their relatives, didn't want to go anywhere else. So we decided to create a capacity of 7,000, which is 10% of the designated people living in that area. This was prepared, or this was our planning size that we were using. For that purpose, we had 2 halls on the trade fair, and they were able to accommodate exactly this 7,000 people. We got 2 other halls, Jahrhunderthalle, which is far in the west, where we later decided to put all the people from the nursing home, so that they are not getting together with the other ones, and that they have a little bit more privacy and wouldn't get in that sort of hectic or whatever. And Ballsporthalle, the second one, was acting as a reserve, so we would have been able to put another 4,000 into that, because we were really not knowing how many people were finally using that. Just on the map of our city, you see the evacuation zone, and right in the south, right south of here, it's trade fair hall number 1, so it was exactly on the border of the evacuation zone, and the other 2 halls were here. We also checked other possibilities that we could have on a short-term basis for if this dismantling or this deactivation wouldn't work, wouldn't take longer, and all the people that are moved out were coming back somewhere in the night, and that we have a possibility to bring them somewhere. So our first plan we had is that we start on Friday, September 1st, with the premature infants, with the babies. And the next step would be on Saturday, September 2nd, we will start to evacuate the hospitals and all the rest, including the nursing homes, but we decided to leave them in their known environment as long as possible, would be evacuated on Sunday, September 3rd, starting at 6 o'clock. The disarming should then start around 12, so we estimated that we would need around 6 hours to do the evacuation, and the return transport should be after the disarming around 5 o'clock, because he said he needs 4 hours, and we added another hour, so around 5 o'clock there should be the transport back, except all the people that were under intensive care. So this is a little bit more complicated, and we decided to put them back on the Monday, so with no hurry, no rush on that. The outside situation on that Sunday, for our estimation, we had a sufficient time frame. Everything will be happening somehow at dame time, the evacuation at least. Weather conditions were good, so we had sun, not too warm. So next day, Thursday, another big black point black hole what we did not really were able to estimate are all the people that were in home care situations. So old people at home, lying in bed, being taken care of the caretaking service, being under respiratory aid and all that stuff. So it was very hard to get numbers of them, because the only thing that was known by the City Department of Social Affairs was that there are around 500 nursing services in the city, but that's it. So there's no data centrally available anywhere about these home care patients. And for us, of course, we had no clear numbers of lying patients and patients with artificial respiration. And then we searched the internet and we found a planning approach that 2 out of 1,000 persons could be a valid number of people being in home care. So that would mean in our case we would have to do it with 100, or we have to take care of 150 persons, and which was the number that we were putting our plannings on. In order to get that somehow systemized, we created a database for transport registration, and this thing was put online, and there was also a possibility of registration through the public telephone hotline. So, with all that, take a look at staffing during these days from our department. We were using our mass casualty unit. We were enlarging in our incident commandings from B5 to B10, which is the divisional level. So, sorry, no, it's the battalion chief level. So 6 extra battalion chiefs, Division 3 and Division 4, 2 extra division chiefs. We had some additional staff in the dispatch center. We were manning the telephone hotline. We were putting all volunteer fire department companies into service, and all the volunteer EMS companies were also put in service for that day. External unit, or external units, external help we got. We ordered through the Ministry of Interior around 30 EMS transportation units. Each transportation unit consists of 4 ambulances, so that would mean we had 120 ambulances in the city extra. 11 recuperation and care units, so that was the ones we needed for the halls where we put the people in. 8 additional mass casualty units that were also assisting and helping with the transportation. We also got 30 buses of the Public Transport Authority, and they were not coming in extra, so this was achieved in just cutting the lines in half. So it means if normally on a Sunday every 20 minutes a bus is going around, and they cut it in half to every 35 minutes or every 40 minutes, so that we had half of the buses in the end that we could use for the evacuation. The special thing about that is if you have a bus driver, he's very great with everything that happens on his bus line that he drives every day. But if you try to tell him or give him a list and say, okay, you go to Raymond Street and afterwards to that street and to that street, he's totally helpless. So they can do everything on their lines, but that turned out to be that we had to put on every bus somebody with from the fire department with a handheld radio in order to coordinate his way where he has got to go to and to drive to. And 25 special buses for wheelchairs, of course, because we have some people sitting in wheelchairs, and you not just can't put them on a truck somewhere and carry them somewhere. Crews on Saturday, where the evacuation of the hospitals should be taken care. Far on the left you can see we had around 100 extra people just for transportation, and another 32 ambulances that are helping us out with the transportation from the hospitals. Sunday was a little more, so around 130 extra ambulances in here, and a lot of other staff like the mass casualties unit, recuperation and care units, which were assigned all over the city, of course. Our emergency management committee, where we were sitting all the days in here, and where all the planning and all the coordination had taken part. Just some views inside. In the middle, on the table in the middle, there are the decision takers, and all around them there's the help crew for the decision makers. There's the reporting crew that is doing the diary, that is or reports everything or documents everything that is going on there. We had the liaison from the police there. We had the liaison to the volunteer companies. So everybody literally is there in that committee. Another look at that plan. So this was the staffing plan of the Emergency Management Committee. You see a lot of people, and we were able to run this manned during the daytimes and in the night. So in the night nothing really happens. So Saturday night and of course Friday night there was nothing really going on. So this was on a callback basis organized. The work is done during the daytimes. Communications, just a short look, looks a bit complicated, but it's just a staging area, it's hospitals, it's evacuation, and it is the halls. So being put all together, I always have trouble reading this. Also looks like a grade 2, but in the end, yeah, it's something we need to have. Present media work, I told you about that. We had our first press conference on Thursday afternoon, and from that point on, this is our commissioner that's talking at that time. You see there's a huge media interest, and this press conference took place in our training center. The idea behind that was also to keep them as close as they have to be, but as separated from the command structures and from headquarters as it is finally possible. Friday after that, we started the evacuation of the ward for premature infants. Next day and Saturday, the hospitals. So we had a mobile command post from our neighbor city called Offenbach. Small one, not very important at all. And they were coordinating this transport from the staging area to the hospitals, and on the hospitals themselves, here you can see all the ambulances coming in. On the hospitals themselves, we had also an incident commander and a crew that is taking care of that every patient gets where he was supposed to get. A picture of that. And again, it was very lucky coincidence that these two hospitals were right next to each other. So the ways of transportation were very clear on that. Also, intensive care units. And of course, there were also patients with special diseases. So where you need special protective gear for. And that worked out actually pretty well, so that at Sunday afternoon we all got this done, and it all worked out as originally planned. Preparation of the halls. We had a logistics point at headquarters, so everything was brought there and from there relocated to the place where it's been needed, like beds, for example, because we were not sure if that might have taken longer, depending on the disarming process. And in the halls, this is one of the trade fair halls, the basement, and everything was built up, being prepared on that Saturday. Lucky thing was that you can drive in with the truck and just put it out where you need it. This was the other hall we had, where we decided to put the elderly persons in from the nursing homes. So, and then there was Sunday, September 3rd, the big day. The evacuation started as planned around 6 o'clock. And we take a look at the map again. We have right here on motorway 5 a motorway station called Taunusblick. This was completely blocked for us by the police, so the police removed all the trucks and all the civilians from that motorway station so that we could use it as an assembly area. So every external units that were coming from us from all over the state first were going to this assembly point. After that, we had a staging area on motorway 66, which is going right into the city. And you can see that. The way from the assembly point to the staging area, the whole road was blocked exclusively for us. Took around 5 minutes to go from one point to the other. And in the staging area, there was another command post where they get their orders where they go to and what to do there. At the assembling point, just an aerial view with all the ambulances coming in for the transports that needed to be done on Sunday, the lying patients from at home. Another view. Of course, the command post again. Coordination was everything in that days. When they came in, they were all registered, getting numbers, and then they were sent out as they have been ordered through the staging area. Staging area was put on A66. Another command post here. So everything on that highway, which was completely blocked exclusively for us, came in here. We had the buses with the drivers. They got their fire department's colleague assigned in here with the radio in order to help them where to go. We have these special cars for wheelchairs, 25 of them. The ambulances again. Logistics were a very important point. So these were two of my guys from the fire academy, two of our driving instructors. They were circling all day long all over the city and bringing food and water and drinks to everywhere. Another thing like that. So this is also something you have to have in mind if you take this generator. It's important to read that it's not one of ours, but somehow they just fail, and you have to have a spare somewhere in order to have electrical energy on the point you need it. Look from above. The evacuation itself happened partly with the help of the police, because we had people that were refusing to go. But the funny thing was that on this public telephone hotline, the neighbors were informing us, hey, listen, my neighbor just told me that he's not planning to go. So we made a note of that into the database, and that was handed directly to the police, and they finally took care of that. And we also had persons calling us by themselves saying, no, we're not going to leave. And we asked, okay, important information for us, where are you? And they just told us everything we needed to know. And they got some visitors from the police on that morning, and yeah, there were still people left in that evacuation zone. That is 100% clear. Yeah, we're not we're 100% sure about that. There was a guy from state radio, for example. he had the night tour on the radio station, came home in the morning, fell asleep, and woke up somewhere in the evening where all this procedure was gone. So, and the bad thing was he was doing a report about that. So, okay. But these things happen. So, people with wheelchairs were evacuated with that buses. We had massive police forces in the city taking care that nearly nobody would be inside. That's the interesting point about that is the leader of the state bomb squad. As soon as he has information about somebody being in the evacuation zone who's not belonging there, he immediately stops all the work because it's under his responsibility. So at that moment, and we had a moment like this, I'm going to show you later on, this has to be done very, very accurate, and police was not very good on compromises at that point. So there was not big discussion. That was a little bit later on, so it was like a ghost city. Nobody was there. At least you haven't seen them. And looking at the halls, what had happened there. So we had Trade Fair Hall #1 for the people that are not willing to go anywhere and say they need a place to be during the day, and they're not interested in museums maybe. So this was the outside, and on the inside, the EMS crews and recuperation and care crews opened the Swedish table, as I learned today. And see in there, so they were prepared for 7,000 people, but in there were around 100 maybe. So that was, because of the weather, so lucky coincidence for us again. Evacuation of the nursing homes. Right here, TV was everywhere, of course. And we put them to the Jahrhunderthalle. They were around 150 to 200, creating their afternoon for them, and everything was good. It's actually a problem in these nursing homes is that some of the patients sitting in there, if they're not that stable in their mind, they're getting flashbacks of this time going back this 75 years. So this is something that needed a lot of care and a lot of special treatment. They also got something to eat. So logistics, we had a central logistic point, as I told you, in headquarters. They were also there to keep the emergency management committee running. So we had food there, we had drinks there, everything we needed. We created a central media center in headquarters. This is originally our gymnastic hall, our gym. Idea behind that was, again, to have them somewhere centralized, define them clear rules, and having them under control, not having them running through headquarters and giving the microphone to anybody in the house. And in the end, we fed them with all the things they wanted to have. We had our chief of department who was giving a lot of interviews, and he's, of course, very, very good at that. So he's a I think there's no English expression. Let's call him a front man. We have another expression for that in Germany, which is a little bit harsher. But he was exactly at the right position at that time, because everybody knew him from TV, and the words he said for everybody were like a general rule. So it was nearly like a preacher. They were hanging on his lips, and yeah. For us, we called him and said, okay, here, listen, there's a problem there and there and there, and he was easily able just to put it and spread it out over TV. So that was the only thing he did in order not to reduce his achievements on that day. But he was our #1 fireman on that day, and he was rocking the show for us outside. So perfect. Next to him, our commissioner and the police commissioner. And of course, a lot of interviews. This is our chief of public relations. Social media was a very, very big point. So we had, together with the police, an own crew of 8 people just taking care of Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and all the other stuff that's out there. In the beginning, we underestimated that and the force that's behind that. So the crews and the people working in that social media group were enlarged from Friday on, because it became that huge. And yeah, finally managed it, but it was a very, very special experience at that moment. So State TV, they were sent out their house, so they came over to us. They put up their stuff in our yard, and they were out on the terrace. Headquarters was on the back side, and they knew exactly that they're not supposed to cross this line, and they really didn't. So that was part of the contract. And again, the chief explaining the world to everybody. So it worked out really, really perfect. The telephone hotline was manned by parts of our volunteer fire service, by parts of the city police, and they get a list of frequently asked questions, so which made it easier for them to answer all the questions that were coming up and were just repeating themselves. And then, with a delay of 2.5 hours, because there were some people found that are not really wanted to go, but again, police did not do any kind of discussion in that point. With a delay of 2.5 hours, the disarming finally started. And that was the key to disarm. Does anybody know what that is? That's a so-called rocket clamp. And this mechanism, Simon, I see you got a lot of technical gadgets. I think you need one of those too. That is put around the igniter, and the screws are tightened up. And in this, on the side, there's a small explosive load inside that. And by pressing a button, it turns the igniter out with on very high speed. So it's not today that the disarming experts are, as you know it on the films, is it the black wire, or is it the red wire, or the green, or take the cat and run. And they're not doing anything manually on these devices. So they put on this rocket clamp, they hide themselves, pressing the button, it gives a short boom, and normally the igniter should be out then, which is in most cases the case. When they removed the first igniter, there was a break, because just at the point when the bomb expert was mounting that rocket clamp to the second igniter, he took a look around and he saw someone on a bicycle going by. These things happen. So, yeah, whatever. The bicycle was torn away from him, and he was removed from scene, and then this whole thing could have gone on. And there was a close connection between our incident commander, the bomb expert, and the person in charge from the police. They had their cell phone numbers exchanged, and if in the evacuation circle had been something like an automatic fire alarm, like a gas alarm, or smoke development, or whatever, we would have treated that, but only in the breaks between the ignitions. So if the bomb expert says, no, I'm just about to remove the next igniter, this is a no way for us. So everything could have happened, but we wouldn't have gone inside the evacuation circle. So after they removed all bikers around the scene, we managed, the disarming was finally finished at nearly 6:30. And of course, a lot of people we're going there to see the object. Actually, we're getting this the bomb back, so it is dismantled right now, and we're getting this one back for a museum in October or so. So you can see there were the 3 igniters in. Mayer gets some photos with the expert that disarmed the bomb. He was he's a very, very smart guy, a very not that straightforward person, but he was torn through every TV channel in these 2 days, and he was not feeling good. And I met him again some weeks ago. We had another incident with an exploded device, and he said, "You know what? I wasn't able to go to a public swimming pool with my family with people not recognizing me," which was far away from Frankfurt. And said, "Oh yeah, you were the guy that did the dismantling of the bomb." And I said, "Oh yeah." So he was lots of regrets. So Chief again giving interviews, and all in all, it was a good operation for us. Just some summaries. During that days, we had around 1,375 people, emergency workers in the city that we had to coordinate. We got help from everywhere, as you can see, from Darmstadt, Wiesbaden, all over our state. Some numbers again: 450 additional vehicles. We had 150 transports from the hospitals, 50 from the nursing homes, some 150 from at home, nearly the number we had estimated, so that number was completely right. Neonatal, 60, 800 sitting, and around 1,200 completely. The public telephone hotline had 30,000 calls in these 6 days, and it was in the main working time manned with up to 20 persons in order to take that calls. Some conclusions for us. Boredom is a killer, especially in that halls. So the volunteer EMS companies there, the recuperation and care companies, they were settled and ready for 7,000 people, and only 100 came. So we needed to give them to do something in order to keep the mood up in the end. So this is a big factor. Abilities and structures of other city departments. That's something that I said, or I was mentioning at the very beginning, because they don't have an emergency call number. They don't have incident command structures in some way. So in the end, at this, or finally at this incident, we were all aware that if something happens like that, we are in the boat no matter what, no matter who is responsible by any law or whatever. From my perspective, from training, there were some things like we found out that digitalization will be the biggest challenge for us in the near futures. Might it everything be in drones, robots, you name it. So this will be the next big topic that will do something with us in the next some year. And I think, Ricardo, you will have the same experience with the things that are coming in the Netherlands. Press and media work must become an essential part of the officers' education, because they were all around. And today, everybody who has a cell phone is a reporter. So you get videos, you get statements, the net is full of them. And you have to teach your officers, or our officers have to be taught how to handle that. It's massive. We will get more and more specialists and less universalists, because all the things are getting more and more complex and complicated. This is something that goes very close together with the digitalization part. Yeah, we have growing cities, but to my personal feeling, it is like that with the cities growing, the abilities of the inhabitants of these cities are going down. So the people are just helpless from time to time. Our emergency calls regarding EMS, for example, are going up all the years. And it's more and more complicated to find the right answers to the questions that they're given to us. So cities are growing, and the inhabitants will pose a big challenge to us in the next following years. I'm totally sure about that. Stability of volunteer structures. In Germany, a big part of the emergency response system relies on, or the biggest part relies on volunteer structures. And also in these days, the volunteer forces really rock the show. So that wouldn't have been possible without having them. But the questions that are more and more coming up is how stable and how constant could these volunteer structures finally be, or what can we do that they stay stable like that? And I feel in my country, I'm also commanding a volunteer fire service. There's not enough to be done to keep that. We had 5 days to prepare, finally, which was our big luck. And the next 3 disarmings were completely different. The last one was an original, where this device, or it was a smaller one, it was also, it was actually brought by a dump truck to us. So they put it out of the ground, put it on that dump truck. The dump truck went from Aschaffenburg to Frankfurt, and it was loaded off, and then they found, oh, there's something. But these were the Bavarians, so this is normal. So this is, we loved them anyway. So after all, the chief was lucky. The sun was going down over the city. That's it. Happy to hear your questions. Thanks a lot.